Good morning. My name is Tony Saldanha, and I'm here to share with you why our business services industry is being completely disrupted. And I'm going to share with you why there's never been a better time than now to be in the shared services industry. No, I haven't had too much of vodka early in the morning. Both statements are true. And what I'm going to do with you is to share with you stories from my 27 years at Procter & Gamble, including leading global business services and IT in every region of the world. But first, I'd like to start with a quick video, a couple of videos that will make that point.
Welcome to the Automated IT Support Center. Our menu has recently changed. Please listen to all the options before selecting. We are sorry for the inconvenience. For email-related issues, please press 1. For printing-related issues, please press 2. For server-related issues, please press 3. For database-related issues, please press 4. For intranet-related issues, please press 29. For website-related issues, please press 30. You can now choose an option from our menu. In your own words, please describe the issue you are experiencing with printing.
I'm unable
You can start speaking now.
I'm unable to connect to the 5th floor printer.
Are you looking to request access to the 5th floor printer?
So, I'm sure we've all been through situations like this. The fact of the matter is that, in today's world, some of the business services that we provide our clients can come across as insufficient and inadequate. And then we hear about all of these cool things that are coming, including the fact that technology is going to change the world.
Comme ça?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me in French?
Pouvez-vous me entendre en français?
Ah oui. Mais je peux t'entendre parler français? Mais c'est
Yes,
génial.
I can hear you talk French.
Attends, comment ça se fait? C'est
But this is awesome. But how you do it?
Yeah, it's translating. It's translating.
And this is really what's possible. You have some of the experiences that can come across as inadequate, and you have this great technology that's available. And this is really what I'd like to share with you. The question is not whether it's possible, as Phil and others said. The question is how. How do each one of you turn this into a land of incredible opportunity? And this is really some of the story that I want to kind of share with you about how we were able to take a $2 billion operation in global shared services and IT at Procter & Gamble and disrupt it. And by disrupt, I mean change it 10x, 10 times, not 10%. And that includes several projects. Each of the boxes up there kind of represent projects. Each one of them was a multi-billion-dollar impact. And it included things such as, how do you essentially replace, not just improve things like travel and expenses and supply chain planning and so on and so forth. But, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, because what I'd like to do now is just kind of step back and share with you how I'd like to structure this talk, including a little bit of context about who I am and where I come from, and secondly, support the points that I want to make around how the world is being disrupted around us, and then more importantly, to each one of you, what can each one of you do about it, okay? If that makes sense, let's roll. I see this trend these days in Facebook and LinkedIn to put a picture of yourself that was a little younger, a little handsomer. In my case, that's it, okay? In all seriousness, I've had the incredible opportunity of essentially growing up with the IT and shared services industry. I was in the Philippines. I started the first shared services center there as early as 1993. I had the opportunity to be the program leader of outsourcing about 2/3 of IT and global business services at Procter & Gamble in 2003. And then I was CIO of the Gillette company when P&G acquired them. And then I had this great opportunity to run GBS and IT in every region of the world until about 3 years before I retired from P&G in 2018. I saw the light. And the light was it's insufficient for any of us today to be best in class. Because real competition, especially for medium and large-sized companies, are not other medium and large-sized companies. They are startups. Because startups have half the cost structure and 10 times the agility that we in large companies have. And so for all of the credit that we give ourselves about being best in class, we're kidding ourselves. And so that's when we started to think about how do we disrupt the entire global business services industry. The next generation of services did not exist. And so we put together the equivalent of a Google X for global business services. We brought together venture capitalists and scale partners, large companies, and we said, what we're going to do is work on creating 10x products. And that's basically the story that I'd like to share. Those are the 25 projects that I shared about. But before I go too far there, I'd like to apologize, because what I'm going to share with you for the next few minutes is stuff that you all know. But I think it's important to connect the dots here. And so I want to share why the future is being disrupted by cheap computing. You're aware of this. This is Moore's Law. But what I'd like to highlight is how the future is here. In a few years, by 2023, you will be able to go out with $1,000 in your pocket and buy the computing capacity of an entire human brain. Just think about it. An entire human brain. A brain is a marvel of nature. And to be able to go there and throw $1,000 down the table and say, I need one of those, that's absolutely mind-boggling. But it's better or worse, depending on your point of view, because a short 20 years after that, you'll be able to throw down the same $1,000 and get the equivalent of all the brains on Earth. And what does this mean? It means that technology companies are doing extremely well. Because if you look at the valuation of companies in the world, 5 of the top companies are tech companies, but that does not include Amazon and Alibaba, which arguably are tech companies. Now, only about 8 years ago, that list was only 1. And it's not just companies, entire work processes, which is the industry which we are in, is changing. Let's take supply chain. The fact that Zara is able to go from design to retail shelves in about 2 weeks is absolutely fantastic. Let's take research and development. Xiaomi ships new batches of phones. I'm not talking about software upgrades. I'm talking about new batches of phones every week. And it's not just processes. It's entire industries. You have, manufacturing and transportation and retail, so on and so forth. And by the way, it's not just industries. It is very personal services as well. Because when you kind of think about what's most personal to people, it is going for advice, including financial advice, to other people. And 10% of that will be actually done by robots very quickly. And by the way, it's not just personal services. It is society itself. It's incredible to think that in about 10 years from now, there might be 24 million US people that are less literate than a computer. Absolutely mind-boggling. So you're asking me, okay, fine, what do I do with all of this? The first thing is embrace technology. Let's take a look at how you might do that. You don't have to be quite as literal as that. You don't have to say, I love you, robots. By the way, and if you do embrace technology, choose the right one. That was a water heater, but that's OK. The context, the subject matter behind all of this is what you're seeing is the effect of the 4th Industrial Revolution, where digital and physical and biological is all coming together. You're aware of that. But the reason I bring that up is for us in the business services industry, it's extremely clear to be cognizant of terminology. Digital disruption is basically that revolution from the third to the fourth. Digital transformation is what you do to make sure that your organization thrives in the fourth industrial revolution. And that's really what brings me back into what we can do about it, including the Procter & Gamble experience. So when I realized this, like I said, when I saw the light about 3 years ago, we went out and talked to about 100 different companies, startups, venture capitalist consultancies, and we saw things such as the fact that, when you see these short news updates on Yahoo Online, about a paragraph, 90% of them are written by robots. I came across a company that had the ability to ingest about 6 inches thick contracts, very complex contracts, and then redline them, saying these are the terms that are out of clause from P&G standpoint, and these are the areas where you could negotiate. Lawyers, whoever thought lawyers could be disrupted? I ran back home to my sister, who's a lawyer, and said, hey, I found a way to disrupt your job. But that was not the point. This is not about sibling rivalry. It's about what you can do. And by the way, this stuff is here. It is now. I happen to live in the great city of Cincinnati, and this is a tweet from the police department that said, there was a shooting in a certain area, Avondale. The shooter was confronted with ShotSpotter evidence. ShotSpotter is the AI technology that triangulates in real time whenever there's a shot fired in the city. The fact is, the surprise is not that there is AI at work. The surprise is Cincinnati. Cincinnati is the place that Mark Twain said, when the end of the world arrives, I want to be in Cincinnati because 20 years behind the times. This is Cincinnati, come on. And so the question of how far away is the disruption was something that I grappled with 3 years ago until this happened to me. I was exchanging emails with the CEO of a startup saying, let's meet. And we did the traditional, hey, when are you available? I'm not, And he said, AJ Brustein was the name of the guy. He said, I'm copying Amy. And then Amy sent this email to my admin, which is all very boring until you click on x.ai, bottom left, and you find out that Amy is a robot. 2 things. This is 2015, 3 years ago. And the second is the most personal of services to the CEO was being done by a robot. That's when we said, we have to disrupt ourselves. Each of these projects was about a $50 million size of prize. I want to share with you some examples of what we did. So we all, in large companies, have accounts receivables, and we all have claims or disputes. So what happens is, if Procter & Gamble ships $1,000 worth of cases to Walmart and you get only $900 back, the rest becomes a claim. And so you have 400 people at P&G side and maybe a few other people on Walmart side that start to negotiate with each other, AR versus AP. We put together an AI algorithm that was able to, in real time, tell whether a given claim was valid or not. Another example, we do call centers. Some of these call centers are a little more complex. So when you look at when a large company like P&G has a global call center with product ranges that are literally in the thousands, those poor call center agents struggle because, one time you might get a question like, hey, can you tell me if this diethyl oxide, whatever in the shampoo, is sustainably sourced in Indonesia? The next moment you get a question that says, hey, my baby's diaper is leaking, what do I do, right? So the poor call center agent has no way to give the answer for everything. We put together 2 AI algorithms, one that did in real time, voice to text. And by the way, because we're crazy, we started that in China to translate Chinese to English. And the second actually went out into the back end of systems of P&G and was able to get the best answer at any given point to that question. And if the question was an email, it actually wrote the response. We didn't send it out because we always wanted a human response. Another example was, how do you manage the complexity internally within the company for the poor employees? Let's say you have a new employee coming in for onboarding. Instead of going into 5 different systems, security, payroll, so on and so forth, why don't we put together a chatbot that actually is a master bot that is able to negotiate across all of those systems and put all of that as one process? And we were able to do this. Another example is IBM and Maersk have put together this great blockchain project for shipping that is able to track the location of your product, let's say from a supplier in China to the US, across customs, freight forwarders, so on and so forth, all on one blockchain, which is pretty cool, except that some of us were crazy and said, we want to do a 10x on top of that. If I have perfect information about what's happening in the supply chain, thanks to your information, then I never want to see another invoice. Because I know what the contract says I should pay you. I know exactly what the damages and fees are. Why do you want to waste your time creating an invoice and my time paying the invoice? So that's what we did, and again, this is in place in about 15 different shipping lanes. So these are just a few examples of what's possible. Now I want to kind of shift to, where do you start? This was my younger daughter's contribution to this conference. I said, do you have any advice for the attendees? She said, yes. Tell them not to harm the robots because they're going to be our masters soon. That is a joke. Please don't worry about that. But no, there are three things that I'd like to start with. One is you have to enable within your organization 10x disruption in parallel with operations. The second is create an ecosystem, because no matter how good you think you are, the ecosystem is always smarter than you. And the third is to build digital capabilities. On the first one, enable, Google has this great formula which I use to great effect, 70-20-10. 70% of your capacity, operations, 20% continuous improvement, 10 to disrupt yourselves. The 10 doesn't have to be 10. At P&G, I probably use less than 1%. And those were some of the examples that came out. But the fact of the matter is most organizations don't have this deliberate three-tier strategy. You have to do that. The second, ecosystem. You guys have heard about the big oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico about 10 years ago. They couldn't figure out how to solve it. They had to go ask the ecosystem for an answer. Here's what they got.
Over 350 teams from around the globe submitted to enter. 10 were selected to bring their technology to compete. Every single one a fresh idea. And the best of the best earns a $1 million prize.
That was done by XPRIZE. The organization that won it, there are two guys that actually came up with the idea. One was a tattoo artist, the second was a dentist. What does a tattoo artist and a dentist have to do with oil spills? Well, apparently, there's a lot that you can learn across industries. And then the third is manage for organization change. I love this chart because Martek's law says technology grows exponentially, your organization capability grows logarithmically. The longer you wait, the bigger the gap that you have to overcome. And so, those are the three E's, but in the spirit of the US, but wait, there's one more. There is one more, which is E, execution. 70% of digital transformations fail. And what I want to do is I want to share that the reason for that is because we run it with the wrong processes, we run it with the wrong disciplines. And this is something that I have a book coming out in the next month or so. It's available on Amazon that talks a little more about what you can do about it.
Camel racing is an ancient tradition in the Arab world, but mechanical jockeys used today have only been around for a decade or so. The jockeys weigh about 6.5 pounds. They come equipped with a walkie-talkie so the camel can take directions, and a small whip, which is activated by a remote control.
So ladies and gentlemen, in today's world of the next, where you can actually have an admin be a robot, when you can have your newspaper articles be written by robots, and you can have robots do camel jockeying, there's absolutely no reason why you cannot have the best time of the world in this environment. Thank you very much.